Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, thank you so much again for joining us here on the Plain Truth podcast. We're bringing the plain truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We rely on John 17:17 for that. Sanctify them by thy truth. Thy word is truth.
Amen.
And so, thank you so much for joining us again and for engaging with us. It's been a while since our last episode. We chatted about Christmas last time. And so, I think we must say Happy New Year. May God bless you and may you carry you throughout this year. And again, as we always do, if you want to get in touch with us, please reach out. We'd love to discuss anything that we discuss here with you, whether it's in person or come to you for Bible study. We'd love to do that. So today, our topic for today, we're going to be talking about eldership, pastors, and we're going to be asking the question, who can be a pastor? Who can be an elder? Who can be an overseer or a bishop, right? And I use all of these terms, or shepherd, I use all of these terms for a particular reason, right? And we'll get into the discussion. Do these things mean different things? Do they refer to the same office, the same thing? And then what are some of the qualities that the Bible prescribes for these roles? And so if you have a pastor at your church or at your local place where you worship, it would be good for you to do the exercise and compare, with the text and the discussion that we will have here today as to whether that person or your pastor meets the requirements that the Bible sets out. And so, gents, not any further ado, any introductory remarks here for the topic of the day?
Yeah, I would say, like you mentioned, does your place of worship, your church, does that have a pastor? And do they fit those qualifications? I would extend that a bit and say, maybe you are called a pastor.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe someone calls you a pastor. Because I've been called a pastor before, and I was uncomfortable when they did, because then I tried my utmost to explain to them what a pastor is biblically. And then I told him, please, if you're going to call me something, call me a preacher. Not that it's my title, but that's what I do, right? So it defines what I do. So I'm more comfortable calling myself that. But I guess as we get into the text, we can decide. But at work, at the school that I teach, myself, someone called me a pastor. They called another colleague of mine also pastor. He had no issue with it. Yeah. So I was just curious if he actually knew the things that Paul writes to Timothy about. Because he was comfortable being called a pastor. So maybe they call you pastor. Do you meet the qualifications?
So before obviously learning better, I also use pastor and preacher interchangeably. Obviously I know better now. But I want to ask you, either of you, to elaborate. And I know because I've done a lot of reading, and it's often the word office, because you used it as if the listener is well versed and they'll automatically understand. So when you say office, what do you mean when you say the office of a pastor or an elder? Pastor. No, pasture, man. Pastures.
Well, kind of
exactly. That works.
Because something three days. The shepherd, right? Green pastures. I'll have a go at it. I in my mind, firstly, when I look at the text, and if you have your Bible with you, we'll spend a bit of time in 1 Timothy chapter 3, as well as Titus chapter 1, and then we'll also probably get a bit into 1 Peter chapter 5. And then we'll jump around a bit, but if you have your Bible with you, those will be kind of the core passages for this this series of this topic. But I would say it speaks about a certain position, and the text, especially in Timothy, it has the word office in there. It speaks about the fact that I wouldn't necessarily say it's a title, but it is. It's like, it probably is a title. It's a position that you would hold, and for that position to be held, you need to fulfill certain qualifications for it. And the same, we have jobs, right? And we have job titles, and if you want to be in that role, there's particular things that person does. You describe what the person does, right, in that role, and then there's certain qualifications that the person needs to meet. So I would say, if you want to say the office, that would be a specific position or title, for lack of a better word, that is held by a particular, occupied by a particular person. Thoughts on that?
I don't think I need to add anything. I think you've got it. But the thing that comes to my mind is the role that I play within the family, right? So I'm the dad. If you want to give me a title, I guess that's a title. But certain things that I do, I provide. So you're not going to call me the provider. My wife's not going to go around calling me that. The boys aren't going to call me that. They're going to call me dad. So that's the title, right? So you're going to say that's the office that I've got. But then there are certain things that I do within that office. So maybe the provider, maybe the driver, whatever it might be, right? But there are other things that you can ascribe to me that aren't really the title that I've got, but they speak towards the things that I do and the person that I am. If that helps. So when we look at the text and we look at the title, we're going to go with title. We're going to go with overseer, with bishop, with pastor, with elder. Some of these are used in the noun form, right? To say that that is the office, but some of them are used in the verb form, and I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
And then what I see is if it's used in the verb form, it's not a title for me, but it's describing something that I do.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can get into that then, right? I don't know if you have any other comments on that, but maybe let's get into the different titles. Before we get into the qualifications, let's get into the different. So someone has a congregation where they have a bishop and a pastor, and these are two different people.
Yeah.
And they occupy these two different roles. Or this person is the elder. They have a bishop, an elder, and a pastor at the same congregation.
Yeah.
And they give these people also, they hold them in different regard as well. They esteem them differently. And the question is, different ranks or different, positions in terms of seniority, right?
Yeah.
Is that biblical? Is that what we get from the text, or how do we,
I think the first thing that we can do, right? King James, my friend. Right, so I think you can read yours.
Yeah.
King James, you have New King James.
King
I'm
James.
curious what you have in First Timothy chapter 3.
Yeah.
And then I'll read because just by translation, because these are not different Bibles, they're different translations, right? So King James has older English, ESV, New King James also has newer English. So let's look at the word that you have there, then I'll look at the word that I have. Then we can start to talk about the Greek as well.
Yeah, so the King James, if we start in First Timothy chapter 3, right, reading from verse 1 there, this is a true saying, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. And then it says a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife. So it goes into the requirements of a bishop. And I think we'll get into that. So maybe we can just do those first two verses.
So my reading, the saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach. And then it continues.
No, mine also says bishop.
Okay, so just interesting, right? So off the bat, we can see then the overseer and the bishop, they are the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. Do you want to say anything else before I go to another text?
No, you can go to another text.
So when we read through First Timothy chapter 3, we understand what is being described is the qualifications of the overseer, the bishop. Right? Yeah. If I go over to Timothy, not to Timothy, to Titus, go over to Titus chapter 1. I think it's some verses.
Verse 5 should be verse 5.
So I don't think I'm going to read all of it now, but what I'm going to encourage is you read from verses 5, maybe even till the end of the chapter. Right? Go until the end of the chapter, because as much as it speaks about the qualifications there, it also gives us a certain reason as to why certain of these qualifications are there. But when we read through Titus, we are very certain that they are speaking of the same thing. Okay, I'm going to give us another text. We're going to go to First Peter to just prove my point over there. But when Titus speaks, Titus says, "This is why I left you in Crete." So that this is verses 5, chapter 1. This is why I left you in Crete. Paul writes to Titus, so that you might put what remains into order and appoint elders in every town, as I directed you. If anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife, and then it continues to go on. Let me maybe just mention this quickly. Of these two lists, because there's a list of qualifications, they overlap. I think my Bible gives me a nice table. Yeah. So they overlap. Timothy mentions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Timothy mentions 15 things. Titus mentions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 15 and 13. Timothy includes 3 things that Titus doesn't include, and Titus includes 1 thing that Timothy doesn't include. So just by nature of the overlap, you can see that he's speaking about the same thing. Yeah. Right? So that's my first point. Now, before I go to First Peter, interesting enough, and I think we spoke about this, the Greek word used here.
Yeah.
So the Greek word used in Timothy is episkopos, right? And so that is the word for bishop or overseer.
Yeah.
The Greek word used in Titus,
it's a presbyteros.
presbyteros, right? Which is presbyter. You maybe heard that before, right? And that's the word for elder. So we already see our reading helps us understand that these are the same thing.
Yeah.
The Greek shows us that the word bishop, overseer, elder are referring to the same people, same office, same qualifications. Right. I'm going to pause there. You can add, and then I'm going to go to
yeah. And I mean, the duty of these people, as you will see, will be to shepherd, right? To shepherd the flock, and then you will see that Christ is the chief shepherd, right? But their duty becomes to shepherd the flock, and so you see that they fulfill the same role. They have the same duties. This office has the same duties. They have the same role that they fulfill, and that's also where you get your care or pastor. The word pastor from, because you need to then go to the Latin.
Yeah.
Right? But you better with the language. Maybe,
right. So since you bring up the idea of shepherd, right? And Wade made the pastor reference earlier. Where do we get this word pastor? Because it's a word that's thrown around very frequently and easily today, right? It's thrown around way too easily. Okay, so where does this word come from? It comes from the Greek word poimen. The translation for that word is to shepherd. Okay? And then from the Greek word poimen, it went into the Latin, which was, I think the word is actually pastor, and it's just pronounced in a Latin way. I'm not going to try. Okay, but that's where the word pastor came from poimen being translated into Latin, and then the Latin word being used as a transliteration for the English. But the idea, the pastor was to shepherd the flock, right? To do the things that a shepherd does. Now, some of our newer translations, like the ESV, uses the word shepherd wherever that word poimen is used. And aside from a few references in the Gospels, right? So the Gospels, the noun form is used, but even when that noun form was used, it wasn't used to speak about the office.
Yeah, it's a figure of speech for
somebody. There we go, right? When it's used after the Gospels, it's used in Ephesians, and I think maybe Ephesians 4:11 can be something that we read. It's used in Ephesians. That is not the only time. That is one of the times that it's used as a noun. There's another 2 times it's used as a noun, but as you rightly said earlier, those other 2 times is used as the chief shepherd, or it's used in reference to Christ, to Jesus Christ. Right? So those 2 times, I think the one is Hebrews and the other one is Peter, First Peter 2, I think, and Hebrews 13 maybe. Okay, but those are used to point towards Christ. Okay, the only other reference as a noun is Ephesians 4, and I think it's verse 11.
Yeah. He gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, King James, and teachers.
Pastors, right? So the King James uses that. The ESV newer versions will say some shepherds.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, as it came from that Latin word. Yes. All of the other times that it's used, right, after the Gospels, it's used in verb form. So it's used shepherd the flock. You are supposed to feed the flock. You are supposed to care for the flock. You're supposed to do the things that the shepherd does, right? So I think I always make a reference to Daniel in the Old Testament, right? So not Daniel.
Is that Zion?
No, in David, the shepherd
boy.
boy.
Speaks about shepherding the flock where God actually just he actually reprimands the shepherds at the time for not shepherding the flock. But it's something we can do for the next episode. It's a very, when we talk about maybe the roles of an elder or the duties of an elder, we can speak about that text. It's a very serious text to get into, but we can chat about
a good warning for us, right? But what I'm thinking of as I think about David, what did he do when it came to watching over the sheep?
Yeah.
He protected them, he fought for them, right? He cared for them, and that's some things that the pastor is supposed to do, right? And I guess we are going to get into that a bit later on.
Yeah.
So what am I saying? Just a summary quickly. I'm saying the pastor, the elder, the overseer, the bishop, the presbyter. They're all referring to the same thing. So Peter is interesting because First Peter, what he does there is he uses all 3 of these words in the same 2 verses. Okay, so we're going to read First Peter chapter 5. And it says, so I exhort the elders, right? That one was presbyteros.
Yeah.
I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and a witness of the suffering of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed. Verse 2. Shepherd the flock, right? So he says,
Yes,
as an
poimen.
elder, what are you supposed to do? You must poimen. You must shepherd the flock, right? In the verb form. This is something that you are doing. Right? Shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight.
Yep.
Right? Then uses the third word, right?
Yep.
Which was
Episcopos.
episcopos. So it shows us very clearly the elder is being spoken of, right? That's the office.
Yeah.
What is he supposed to do? He must be a pastor. He must be a shepherd. What else must he do? He must give oversight.
Yeah.
You must look over. You must care for. Right? So it shows us nicely that all of these words, they are referring to the same person, and some of them, or even all of them, based on their definitions, they help us understand who this person is and what his role is going to be.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. For me, I think I just wanted to say, we're not saying don't use the term or word elder. Pastor. We're not condemning the user. I think it's just when you do use it, understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that's very important, right? So when people refer to you as a pastor, there's opportunity to correct, or to teach. Then teach in that moment, as to do the person actually understand what they are referring to. If you are being referred to as a pastor, then maybe it's time to maybe reach out to us and let us have your views on this. Or it's maybe a time to then look a bit deeper into the topic, or at least that word, and how it's used in these texts, right?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being called a pastor.
Yeah.
I mean, if you fit the qualifications, then sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, so maybe let's get into some of these qualifications. I think it will be very important for us to then consider some of these, because there are a lot of people, they're saying that the qualifications mustn't be used to disqualify people, but to qualify people, right? And the question is always like, what do you? Well, I say always. I mean, for me, it's like, what do you mean when you say don't use the qualifications to disqualify people as opposed to qualify? And I think you had a nice response to this. I'm not going to put you on the spot like that. You can think about it. But you had a very good response. I think it was you or someone that we were speaking to that had a response to it. But to me, the qualifications itself will do the qualifying and the disqualifying, right? And I think if you read, in my view, it's just about reading the text, and if the box is not checked and there's a deeper look required, that's when you dig deeper. But you can't, off the surface level, try and interpret immediately and try and wriggle someone in there when they don't even meet the surface level requirement, right? If Titus says believing children and now we want to probe, do they just have to be, God-fearing, or do they have to be Christians, or do they, I think, but maybe let's get into the qualifications, right? I think we stopped reading the text for the first two verses. So maybe we read both Timothy and Titus, and then we can get into some of the discussion around the qualifications. So where do you want to do that for us?
How far are we going?
I think we do 3:1-7.
7.
3:1-7.
Okay, it's New King James. This is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride, he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil.
All right. Then we go to Titus chapter 1. We can do 5-9.
Still from the New King James. Made this same comment and I almost laughed. Anyways, for this reason, I left you in Crete, that you should set in order the things that are lacking and appoint elders in every city as I commanded you. If a man is blameless, the husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of dissipation or insubordination, For a bishop must be blameless, as a steward of God, not self-willed, not quick-tempered, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but hospitable, a lover of what is good, sober-minded, just, holy, self-controlled, holding fast the faithful word as he has been taught, that he may able, by sound doctrine, both to exhort and convict those who contradict.
Okay. So, any preliminary thoughts there?
Yeah.
First thoughts is must be husband. This is something you have to declare in 2026. Husband of one wife means that there has to be a gent, and he must be married to a not gent, a female.
You can't just say a non
Not gent. I suppose you see, I have to be.
26.
Have to be explicit here.
There's a lot of things that come to mind even before we even get into the qualifications, right? So you mentioned one of the qualifications, and I think we can mention it again as we go on. But I think the initial thing is this, and I'm not sure where I heard this point, but it's a very good one, and it says this: the beauty of the Bible. You see, we're sitting and we're reading the Bible in English. Okay, so I think we need to have a episode on our Muslim friends because we keep mentioning them. But when you look at Islam, you have to read it in that language, right? Yes, we have these Qurans that are translated into English, but they are going to say that you must read it in that language to understand it in the right way.
But which Arabic Quran?
Now you see, now we're opening a work can of worms. But when it comes to the Bible, the beauty of the Bible is it is for everyone.
Yeah.
So what that means is it's translated into everyone's language. So when we read it in English, it is sufficient for us to read it in English.
Yeah.
Right? The beauty of the Bible is it can be translated. So when I read, the plain meaning of the reading is still the meaning.
Yeah.
When we do look at the Greek, which I love to do, I'm very fond of doing that. That adds value to my understanding. I can't change what the actual reading says. So if the reading says something, and we're going to see what it says, I can't, by use of the language, make it say something else or take out what it currently says. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So yes, we look at the language for purposes of deepening our understanding of the plain reading, but not taking away the plain reading or not changing that plain reading.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, just to note, right? Maybe, and I like chatting to the audience, who's watching, the viewers, and I think my first thing would be to say, if you've never heard about these qualifications, maybe go and take some time to read through them. And I would, for people who are, you said we use the term pastor easily, right?
Yeah.
For people who refer to themselves as pastors, I think if someone asks you, whether you're a teacher or whether you're an engineer, you know your job description and what you have to do to get there, right? So I would think that if I call myself a pastor, I must know what my qualifications would be, right? And at least in this case, we had to find them. Because one of them would be that you're able to teach, right? So if you never know what you needed to do to qualify for the role, so I think it would be good to maybe ask the person who you refer to as a pastor, or if you are a pastor, to read through these qualifications and maybe think about whether you do or whether your pastor does, meet the qualifications. Just by plain reading, right? Before getting into all of the details, right? Just read through and then determine whether your pastor meets the qualifications. And I think to Way's point, once you have a female pastor, I think you're going to realize immediately that falls without the outside of the scope, right?
Or even if you have a pastor that's not married.
A pastor that's not married, right? Because that's some of the requirements as well. Can't be married, must be celibate, you must be whatever. Again, you're gonna fall foul of the plain reading of the text, right? And so that would be a good exercise to do. And the other thing I wanted to say is the reason why this is probably gonna be over multiple episodes, because you've heard and you've read how many qualifications there are, and many of them are contentious.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can get into some of that, right? And even the one that Wade mentioned, even though I think it's very straightforward about the female, not being a pastor, I think it's very straightforward. Even that is a point of contention.
Sure.
I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time on that because I think the text is clear on that. Yeah. Maybe we can get into it if there's a query on that, but I think that much is clear, right? If you're not a husband of one wife, it speaks about he must have a good report, and it speaks about a guy, about a man. But listen, if we can get into the conversation if we need to. But gents, where are we going to pick this up? Are we going to speak about desire?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
what I was going to start.
Yeah, let's go.
Is that the qualification, or is that even before the qualification?
Yeah. Good question. Firstly, ESV. ESV says, if anyone aspires to the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Just two different words. Your word says desire both times. I'm not sure if the Greek has it as the same word. But when I did look at that word to aspire, it was very interesting because it gives the idea of reaching out towards something.
Yeah.
So when I desire something or when I want something, that's not this word that's used here is not something, one day I wish I can actually get that. But it's actually me working towards it. It's me doing what I can to try to attain it. It's me reaching out toward that goal and trying to say, okay, there are these things. Let's see if I can get these things in order so that I can have that role in my future.
Yeah.
So it's not simply, I want to, not pie in the sky, but it's work that gets me to that point.
Or, we should get Wade to be an elder. Wade, next Sunday we're going to ordain you to be an elder. Right? It's not that type of thing either.
Yeah.
It's an inward desire. I just want to make that point.
But even as you were saying that, I'm thinking like if, before you were a lawyer, you were an aspiring lawyer. So you're not a lawyer yet, but you're aspiring to it. Not by sitting and doing nothing. You are doing the works of a lawyer, aspiring
you're studying hard, you're reading the books, you are making sure that you're going to go pass the bar, pass your exams, so that when it comes time to take that role, you are fully prepared for it.
Actually, very interesting because we do articles, right? Articles is meant it's like a 2-year. Some people can do a course to actually slash it in off, make it 1 year, but you have to go and do practical, like an apprenticeship type of thing for 2 years to prepare you to be able, and then you need to write boards to prepare you to be able to function in that role once you are admitted as an attorney. You would have done the work of an attorney, for the previous 2 years, so that once you're there,
even with your qualification, they don't trust you yet.
No.
Still aspiring.
And even once you are qualified, it's like, no one's going to ask, right? You don't go to an attorney's office and be like, hey, how many years of experience do you have? What do you need to look at is, this guy is an admitted attorney, so you already know what they have to do. And the same thing with an elder, right? If someone holds themselves up to be an elder or pastor, you kind of already know what the person has to do in order to be in that position. But now the mismatch comes when you start digging and you're like, hey, this is a lady. Like the qualifications, that doesn't match up.
And like you said, the lady thing, but an unmarried young person.
Yeah.
And then it's already flags in my mind, like by definition of the word, elder is a person that's older.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you don't have to put it together. Unmarried and younger, unmarried and younger. So
two different qualifications you're not meeting. But I mean, there are some groups, that have young elders.
Yes.
I think of Mormons that have young elders. I think these guys are like 15, 16, the elders.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. How does that even make sense? But just by definition of the word.
Yeah.
But okay. So the first one that I think aspire is a very good one because it must be something, and I think I made this comment at church. It must be something that you are willing to do, something that you want to do. Not only willing,
First Peter.
But it's something that you are. I think First Peter 5 speaks about that willingness, right?
Must
speaks
be willing,
about that desire.
not compulsion.
When not under compulsion, when you truly want to do something, when it is really your desire to do it, you're gonna make sure you do a good job of it. Right? If it is something you're doing under compulsion, I think for the majority of people, we are a little bit mature and we don't do things like just nonsense to get it done. But if you think about like a young kid, if you tell your young kid go clean the room and he doesn't want to do it, he's gonna go close the bed and throw the clothes under and throw the clothes in the cupboard, and it's gonna look on the surface like, okay, fine, it's been done, but it wasn't done properly.
Yeah.
So when that desire to actually do it, so you yourself want to do this and you want to do a good job of it, you're gonna put in extra effort. You're gonna make sure it was done with the best intentions, the best outcome. You're gonna put in that extra effort. So that desire is so important because the person that's gonna do this, he must want to do it, and if he wants to do it, he's gonna do a good job of it.
Yeah, as you saying that, I'm thinking it becomes even more important because if I'm gonna clean my own place, I'll take chances. But I'm gonna clean your place. I'm going to elevate my desire to do it as best as possible, because it's going to be under your scrutiny. You're going to, I can't try, funny stuff to get away with.
I like that, because now when it comes to doing work in God's church,
Exactly.
God is going to be the one that's going to decide, whether this was up to standard.
Yeah.
It takes me to Hebrews. Anyways, that's
takes me to James 3:1. Right? Not many of you should aspire to become teachers, because you're going to be held with greater strictness.
Yeah.
So if we sit in this position as a pastor, we're going to be held with greater strictness, because you're teaching someone else. What are you teaching them? Are you teaching them through?
Yeah, but I mean, I think the text does go into some. I don't know if it's the tightest text that goes into, Christ being the chief shepherd when He shall appear. I think there's going to be an account that will need to be given. But there is a text that speaks about that. You being the shepherd, shepherding the flock. And again, there's that Isaiah text, the one in Isaiah that speaks about, if you're not going to do it as the shepherd, and you've been appointed to do it, God will raise people up, or He'll do it Himself. He will shepherd you, and He will feed His flock. Right? That's where that text gets to in Isaiah. So, let's talk about desire, right? Desire, very important. And then someone will perform in that little kind of before to show that they have the desire, right?
Yeah.
And then it says a bishop must then be blameless. I mean, I don't think we need to.
I think we start off by saying blameless does not mean sinless.
Yeah.
I think, like when we've discussed, we've done studies on this. We spend so much time on blameless. But I think I read there was Kaufman's commentary, and he put it nicely that blameless is pretty much the chief requirement, and then everything else speaks to what makes you blameless in the qualifications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the comment I was gonna make. I don't think Kaufman said it.
I think Kaufman quoted another commenter.
Yeah. So anyway, it doesn't say blameless; it says above reproach, and I think I can try and define that for us in a moment. But the comment that I heard was above reproach is the only real qualification.
Yes.
The rest of the qualifications tells you how you be above reproach. So I like that. But so yeah, they still get into it. So the idea of above reproach, and we have mugs here, so this is nice.
Those things the mugs. You guys stealing everyone's things.
So I picked my mug up by the handle, right? So the idea of being above reproach means that you are without handle. So you can't be grasped, you can't be picked up, you can't be taken up. So if I'm above reproach, when someone lays a charge against me, and I think you're going to talk about that, right?
I was also going to mention that.
Yeah. When someone lays a charge against me, there's nothing for them to actually grasp on. There's nothing they can lay claim to. There's nothing that they can actually say, "Yep, I got you in this because you have done this or you did that," right? So just that idea of there isn't a handle. They can't grasp. They can't hold fast onto you. I am going to make an analogy after this, right? But I think I'll have you.
No, I think that's good. Because people point fingers and people will say things. I think the text, or what above reproach me, it goes beyond that, right? That's an allegation that must be sustained, right? So if someone cannot sustain that allegation, then obviously you remain above reproach.
It's a lawyer talking.
So no, but that's what we get into, right? So and it is a legal term. I guess you put someone on the stand, right? And it's presumed innocent until proven guilty. And if you are then proven guilty, I guess, and it's not about it's not the court of public opinion, right? There needs to actually be sustained allegation, and then it's actually proven and shown that this person does not live up to the standard, or something was done.
Can I say, sorry, when you say sustained, is that like substance?
Yeah. But it's substance, but it's also like when and again you go back to court, right? They say objection, and they say sustained.
Yeah.
Objection then was upheld. So it succeeded. So if someone
That's what I was
going to make an allegation against you, and the allegation succeeds, then you're no longer above reproach. Right?
Yes.
But then I think it's what's interesting. Getting a bit deeper into the text, or at least the meaning of the word for me is it's more. How do I put this? If someone brings an allegation, right, they can make the allegation, and that's fine, but you need to probe and you need to look into that, and there needs to be needs to be investigated, and then once it's actually shown that this person is continues in this kind of behavior, or this is this person's character, that's where I want to go. Then I think you lose the being
blamelessness.
Blamelessness, because it's more it is about character, and it is about whether you live in accordance with this, right? And if this speaks about forgiveness, and there's been forgiveness, it depends on then what does that do to your blamelessness. But yeah, let's maybe.
And I think it's First Timothy chapter 5 that speaks to when there is a charge against an elder, how it's supposed to be dealt with, right? So I think sure. So I want to add on to that idea of a Bible approach, but I like what you said when there's a charge, because anyone can make a claim, can make a claim, right? And if that claim doesn't hold fast, then that person remains a Bible approach. Okay, but if that claim holds true, then there's a certain way that you have to deal with that person, and Paul writes and he says deal with them very strictly, so that other people can see how it was dealt with and not fall into that same kind of error. Right? So there is a way that it should be handled, and if it's handled in that way, it's a warning unto others. But when I think of the idea of a Bible approach, also it's like like I mentioned, you can't grasp, right? So an analogy that I've heard that was that they can't even assume that it was you. Right? So let's make an example. Let's say they caught me walking out of a bottle store. Right? So I walk out of the bottle store. Just by nature of me walking out of that store, I'm no longer above reproach, because someone can say they saw me in the bottle store. So I'm not taking away from what you're saying, where a claim can be made, but it must be sustained. I'm not taking that away. I'm saying that a part of it they mustn't be able to even put me there. Right, so I remember a story Uncle Mervyn told, and he said he used to go to the shop where Auntie Lizzie, yes, Auntie Lizzie used to go buy material at the certain shop, right? But it was the same shop that she would go to all of the time, and the place where Uncle Mervyn had to park was outside an adult store.
Adult, yeah.
Yeah. So he looks. People could say, "Oh, we saw Uncle Mervyn there," right? So just because they claim, and people talk, and even in the church, people talk and people gossip, and they shouldn't, right? The Christian thing to do, Matthew 18, you go to the brother and you say, "Brother," and then you can have that talk. But now already, because that hasn't happened, because people gossip, there's this idea floating around that this person did that.
Yeah.
So immediately the idea of a Bible approach becomes cloudy because this person. So I'm saying, don't even put yourself in a position where it could possibly be.
I'd say as far as possible.
As far as possible. Because I mean, people are gonna make claims.
Yeah, because Christ he dealt with unfavorable people, but there was a purpose. And obviously, people then would make claims, but as far as possible, we should also. Yeah.
I think you make a good point, because it's the whole thing about who you associate yourself with, right? And they accused Christ of being a wine bibber and being because of hanging out with all of these people. But there was a purpose for that, and not all of us are perfect, right? As Christ was, and so don't think because Christ did it, you can also toy with an idea of hanging out at the casino, and you have a gambling problem. Now you have a drinking problem, and you go to events where there's a lot of drinking. It's not quite the same in that respect.
So I know I'm taking us off now, but whenever someone says that kind of thing, my response is always, when Jesus went into those spaces, what did he do? He told the people, go and sin no more. Okay, so Jesus's purpose of being in that space was to try and reform people. Now I'm speaking in general. People like to say that no, they're going there to maintain relationships but that's not what Jesus did. Jesus didn't go to the party to have fun with the people that were drunk. He didn't go with the drunkards so that we can all just have fun together. He went to the drunkards to tell them sin no more. He went to the people that were in sin, because who needs help? The one that's in sin. He went to the person needing help, and he helped that person. So sometimes we go to these events where maybe there's the alcohol, or maybe it's gambling, or maybe it's something. Sometimes we go to these events where people are doing these things, and we sit quietly. That's not what Jesus did.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus went there for the purpose of pointing out their error and trying to help them out of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good. I think we can pause there on being about. I think the key point there is that blamelessness or Bible reproach is not being sinless, not being perfect, right? But then obviously there's the whole thing about not being grasped. There's the whole thing about what else did you say there?
As far as possible, people can't lay the claim against
claim not being sustained. Yeah.
Successful.
The next one, the husband of one wife. Does it say the wife of one husband? It's the husband of one wife, right? The bishop must then be blameless, the husband of one wife. All right, so
that's for me the contentiousness. It shouldn't be about being a male or female. I think that's clear. But when you speak of husband of one wife, is it the husband right now? Is it the husband absolutely ever for his entire life? I think that should be the only thing that we are even uncertain about at all. But it's obviously not the case.
What does one wife mean?
Yes.
One at a time? Or
one
for eternity?
Yeah.
And, what if the person's wife passed on?
Yes.
Can that person still
what
be...
if he was divorced?
What if he was divorced?
What if he was scripturally divorced?
Yeah.
There's another discussion.
Yeah.
And I think those are all the permutations if there's an issue with the plain text reading, right? So my thing is, we see here you are with your wife, right? If you don't have a wife, it's not even a question, it's a non-starter. Right? If you don't have a wife, that answers the question. Like if you read the text, doesn't meet the requirement. Now you do have a wife, and then people start whispering and they bring the allegation. Right? Now there's Bible reproachness is cloudy. So now we ask you the question about your wife, about this wife that you have now. This is your first wife, it's the second one, how did we get to the second one? And I think there's a process for that. Like we need to go through marriage, divorce, and remarriage. I don't know if you want to deal with that now. If you want to have a separate discussion on that. But there's that question, right? As to whether the person was then allowed to get married again, and have a second wife, if they are divorced from the first one. I think the Bible is clear that when the person dies, that you are free to remarry, right? So if that's your answer that you receive, then I think we're good. But I think it's more when there's a divorce and a remarriage.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's where the contention comes in.
I think we have a Bible study. And we are, our brethren are about to come through for the Bible study. So I think this is where this episode has to be concluded for now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Leaving us on a cliffhanger.
I mean,
I actually like that, I like that because, I think we've gotten into a little bit of the qualifications, right? So I think it would be good to have a bit more of a discussion on being the husband of one wife and what does that look like in the context of someone who's been divorced and remarried. Because there may be pastors that that have been divorced and remarried, or they're on their second wife, third wife. I think we've already mentioned that no wife, obviously you already have issues, you have a challenge. But then there are other pastors who, they divorce their wives and then they get married again, and then they pastors of congregations. And so, we'd like to discuss that in a bit more detail. But gents,
my closing cliffhanger thought also is, what if you meet all the qualifications? I'm speaking as husband of one wife. You could, once you already are an elder, and then you no longer have a wife. That's just my point of departure to think about.
My closing would be this. I would encourage the listener to go read through the qualifications. But then I also encourage you to think about the duties and responsibilities. Right? So once this person is an elder, what is he supposed to do? Because I think if you have a good understanding of what they are supposed to do, it adds value to your understanding of the qualifications that they have. Okay, so we're going to talk about the qualifications more, deal with it in depth, but let's also think about what this person is supposed to do, and then that will also guide how we understand what is being written.
Yeah. I think my closing comment would be that we're not obviously I don't think we will have time across all the episodes, get into each and every qualification. I think some of them are pretty self-explanatory, and then some of them are not as contentious. I think everyone will agree that that would be a qualification, right? That what it would constitute for you to meet that qualification. But again, I think it would be good to read along with us, to study along with us, and I mean. It's some of these are quite contentious, and they're quite heated. And even in the Lord's Church, there are different views on these topics. And as you know, what we do here is we go through the Bible, and we reason from the Bible, and it needs to match up with the context. It needs to match up with the purpose and what the role of an elder is. And you need to consider things like wisdom, and whether it's what's expedient and what's not. And those are all things that we'll endeavor to discuss here. And so, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please let us know. If there's anything in particular about being a pastor that you would want for us to consider, and maybe if you have a question on that. I know some of the questions, like, is there like a chief elder or a chief bishop or pastor or a pope or an archbishop or whatever you want to call it? Should it be in every city for a country or for a region, or should it be for every church, every congregation? Those are some of the questions that people have asked. So
maybe we can also throw in there, is there a priest?
Is there a priest? Yeah. So I think these are good questions. So if you have any of those, please let us know, and we'll then do the research. We'll come up with an answer from God's word for you. I think that's it from us for today. Gents, I'm not gonna ask for any final. I think we're gonna close it there.
Continue to like and subscribe and share.
Yeah.
Pray fast.
Yes, sir. So thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining us again here on the Plain Truth Podcast. We, as always, bring you the plain truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Amen.